And so he's kind of not understanding like maybe like the point of church. Like to come to church is not to signal I'm a Christian. It's not to signal that I'm doing well with God. It's actually like meant to be something bigger than that.
Welcome to the Couchtime Podcast, where we give you tools to connect with your kids and point them to Jesus. I'm Stephen Petrie.
I'm Ryan.
And this week on the podcast, we have I guess an interesting problem, and then we're going to try to diagnose how can we as disciplers of kids, parents of kids, leaders of students, what can we do to better model for our students what it actually looks like to be a disciple of Jesus in terms of what it looks like to be a member of a body, a piece of a whole. Last night at youth, we talked a lot about, we're in Ephesians 2, and he's talking to the Gentiles, and he tells them that, you at one time were the uncircumcision referred to by the circumcision, and you were far off, and now you've been brought near by the blood of Christ, and the dividing wall of hostility has been torn down, and you are now being built together on the cornerstone of Jesus into a holy temple, and you yourselves are being built up in Christ, and there's this idea of the beginning of Ephesians 2 is like our salvation story. Then the end of Ephesians 2 kind of connects your salvation to a whole community of believers. And I think in the American church, American world, as I've talked to students even last night, more and more, the idea of being a Christian just becomes like that they go to a church. They go to a church, they read their Bible, they have some knowledge of things about Christ, but are they really being built up together into a community? Are they being a piece of a whole? Are they, as part of the body, working properly to help the whole body grow? It becomes more and more individualistic, I feel like, and we miss out on being the church. So we just want to talk. Ryan, have you noticed this issue in terms of being individuals versus being a part of a whole church community, and how can parents better demonstrate to their kids what it looks like to be a member of a body, a faithful member of a body, and not just someone who goes to church and walks away?
Yeah, I see frequently students who perceive church attendance as just a marker of, or sort of a sign to themselves that they're a Christian. So I had a student, this was years ago, but he had his struggles with sin, and he would come to church for a month, and then he would be gone for a month.
Dang.
And you'd ask him, like, hey, man, where you been? He's like, well, I messed up. I sinned, yada, yada, so I didn't want to come to church. And I was like, well, that's why you should be coming to church. We hope that you would come to small group and share that. But for him, his church attendance was a way for him, if he felt good and close to God, he'd be at church.
Right.
Count it, check mark.
Yep.
Distant from God, well, I'm not going to go.
Yep.
And so he's kind of not understanding maybe the point of church. To come to church is not to signal I'm a Christian. It's not to signal that I'm doing well with God. It's actually meant to be something bigger than that, of we go to share.
Yep.
Even when kids come to a youth group, we hope that they're sharing what they're struggling with and growing together in these ways. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I've even noticed that with adults. I remember in my parents' community group, there was someone who was really, really struggling. They were having a horrible day, and they're like, hey, today's been really, really hard. There's been a lot going on. I'm really, really anxious and stressed. I'm not going to be at community group tonight. Yep. And my parents are like, no, you need to be at community group tonight. This is the day that you need to be at community group. And that is, I think, the disconnect in a lot of people with their faith, is that we model to our kids and we show them that we have to put on these faces and be really good believers, and we go to church when we're doing well, but they're not getting to see, or we should be striving to show them more what it's actually about to be a believer. And I think that helps students' faith in the long run be strengthened and be like, oh, this is real. Being a disciple is more than just somewhere I go and something I do. It's a people I'm a part of. It's someone who I'm following and changing and growing to become more alike. And I think there's multiple ways that parents can do that to help their kids grow and strengthen their own faith and their family unit. So
I'd like to one other sort of fallacy of church attendance as a marker of being a disciple. The only marker of being a disciple is we'll see students who come to church. I'm a Christian. Next day, party. Like next day, a jerk to their family.
Right.
It's like, well, church, like literally showing up to church is a part of being a disciple, sure, but it's not the whole thing. And just because you went to church doesn't mean you're good.
yeah.
Like there's a whole lot else to being a disciple.
Yeah. So what would you say are aspects of being a member at Grace Fellowship that parents could model for their students or bring their students along into to show them more and more what it means to be a piece of a body that is growing and changing and striving to follow Christ as a collective unit?
Yep. Serving. So it's like, I'm not just going to show up on Sunday and be a recipient of the service, but I'm going to participate and serve.
Yeah.
And that's not just because we're a larger church. I mean, in some ways, even smaller churches require a ton of service as well. Like they got like one dude there being the pastor. But with us too, at a larger scale, we need help. And we're better when lay members of our church are serving.
Yeah.
So,
and I think it's actually easier when you go to larger churches to believe that like, oh, everything's happens
covered
every week. Like I've never gone to Grace and not had coffee except for during COVID. Like there's always coffee there. I've never walked in the door and no one said hi to me. I've never there's this impression of like I'm not needed.
Yep.
And while in one aspect, like, yes, the church will continue to run operationally.
Yep.
If I don't serve or if you don't serve, but you are needed in your own spiritual growth and change to be a part of something, to be growing, to be learning, to be giving your life away, to be sacrificing some of your own time to serve the Lord. And the church does need each piece of the body to be using their gifts and talents that the Lord has given them to grow properly and to be strengthened. And we're missing out when people aren't serving. We're missing out on how the body could be growing and changing and looking more like Jesus and the bride of Christ.
We have a welcome team for student ministry nights, and for their training, I tell them, like, I could set up all the signage, I could run check-in, I could be greet people. Ryan could run the game, he could do the teaching, he could lead small group, but that's not for the benefit of everyone else.
Right.
I'd rather have people that are not just coming and receiving. I want you guys, students, to be doing these things.
Yeah. As I said, we talk to our students a lot about serving, and I think it'd be even cooler if, and some parents are already doing this. There's multiple families at Grace that I can think of in my mind currently that are getting to serve with their kids, and that's such a cool. I mean, when you serve with people, you get so much closer to them. Like the people that I serve with, do ministry with, you connect on different levels. You're spending extended time together. You're pouring yourself out for the sake of something greater than you. Like it automatically is a bonding moment. So to get to do that with your kids, even more so, unless they're just like super resistant to it, is a helpful way to show like, hey, this is something our family believes in and loves. We care for our church. We love our church. We're growing with these people, and we want to be a part of what God's doing. And this is a simple way that we can do it. And hopefully that, connects your family even more as well.
Yep. So I think agreed. And if you're thinking of ways, like I would bring along like you've mentioned, go serve with your child, like hold babies in the nursery, like be welcome on the welcome team, do coffee. We need people to serve in student ministry. Like if you're like, I want to serve at the Florence ministry, how can I do it? I've got ways.
Right.
Like I need a setup team. I'd like people at student ministry praying during the night. Like but we can get creative with ways to get people serving, and it'll make the ministry in our church, our body, better.
Yeah, for sure. What else would you say are ways that we can be more a part of the body in order to demonstrate to our students real discipleship?
Yeah, spending time with other believers. So not just showing up, I find my seat in the back row, listen to a sermon, listen to some songs, peace out. But actually being involved in the lives of other believers. Yeah,
I'd say that has been one of the more impactful things that I've seen from my parents as I grew up is seeing them pour into other people, and like seeing people over at my house from my church that they're talking to, that they're going through life with, either just going and getting coffee and hanging out, or like diving into real deep, hard things that have now taken place. And they're now at a relationship level to get to be able to share. And it's like, wow, I really got to see my parents love and invest well in people from our body and people from our community. And it showed me like, these are real relationships. This isn't just the place that they go. That was really impactful for me
Yep.
in my walk. And obviously getting involved into a community group allows you those opportunities more, but not just going to community group, really seeking out and pursuing people. Like, it's easy for me in a new group naturally, like legitimately, like I just want other people to invite me to things or to bring me along. And if they don't, I'm like, well, I guess no one like likes me here or whatever.
Yep.
But like to be the initiator is difficult,
Yep.
but to be the initiator is the way you like grow relationships and strengthens things. So like if you're being in a community group, well, don't just go to community group, like seek out ways to bring people over to your house for dinner and let your kids see that they're a part of your life and you're a part of their life and you're sharing meals together. And I don't know, it just shows, I mean, all throughout Acts, the early church, whatever, there's all sorts of scriptures about like, hey, don't give up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing. Like,
Yep.
It talks about, sharing bread with one another and life and prayer and mutual encouragement. And all of those things only happen in the context of relationships where people know one another well. And then not only can you just spend time with them, but the other thing is like your kids get to see you pray for people. I think that's really important as well.
Yep.
And if you know people well enough, life is going to happen. Burdens are going to be carried. Hopefully you've built up enough love for someone that they share those burdens with you. And then pray for them. Pray for them with your kids. Pray for them in front of your kids. And it demonstrates being a follower of Christ, being someone who loves God and loves their neighbor, and shows them like this is legit. Like we trust in God and we're going to go to him in prayer.
Yep. I agree. You mentioned praying. I think praying for other people at church is a way to be active and a participant, not just showing up. I think also giving.
Yeah.
Just giving, not as a form of like salvation by works. Like I think people view giving not just church participation, but I give, so I'm good. But giving as an act of worship as well, and framing giving to students in that way as well, I think is helpful.
I think that's another one of my weaknesses that I think through a decent amount, where I'll realize that I've just been giving and giving to grace, whatever, and not stopping to be like, why am I doing this? Like, I'm doing this because I know I'm supposed to. I should give to grace, but like praying over that, thinking through like, okay, this is a sacrifice in order to help expand the ministry, that the Lord would multiply this, that the Lord would use this in these different ways. And I know Grace always posts like the different ministries to be praying for that Grace supports. Like, oh, some of my money is going to those different ministries. So I think taking time to pray over whatever gifts you do give, or doing things outside of Grace Fellowship with your kids where they get to see you bless a family, where they get to see you do something small to love another person. That's also really impactful when you're like, okay, wow, like that's sacrificial. That is their giving of hard-earned finances, hard-earned time, freedom in order to love other people. And to get to bring your kids a part of that and let your kids see that, it's not as a way to brag, but it's a way to model for your kids sacrificial living, that we don't have to just consume, but we can give in order to be like Christ, who gives of himself and models for them the gospel.
Yep. I think with giving too, one warning, like 25 years ago, your child will show up to church with you, you drop a check off.
Yeah.
Automated giving makes that harder for students to see. It just sort of happens automatically, and they might never actually tangibly see you give. So I don't know what ways, if like you forward, just to remind, I get notifications when I give, because if it didn't, it would just draw from my account and I'd never see it.
Right.
And I wouldn't feel that sacrifice. So instilling just markers and reminders for you to help you remind, like, hey, we're a family that gives. And even having your kids give too. Like if they're working at Skyline, great, have them do it, participate as well. So
Yeah.
What other things? Yeah.
What say what
I was going to ask you if you had any other
I mean, initially, I'd say those are the key things I can think of off my head of like where to start with. It's like, okay, and some of these areas you may be crushing, some of these areas you may be struggling in, you may look at it all and be like, I'm not doing any of these things. Like, but to look at your family's regular rhythms and think, okay, are we showing and modeling for our kids that our faith is more than we just go to church and read our Bible, but that our faith is the key component of our life. We talked last night at youth again when I was talking about the cornerstone. Like, Jesus is the cornerstone of the church as a whole and of individual believers' lives, the foundation of which we're being grown on. Is Jesus the cornerstone of your life? Was like the question is like, are all components being built upon Jesus at the core? And if so, like, that changes how you give. That changes who you spend the most time with. That changes how you interact with the people you're spending time with. That changes how you are a part of the body, that you are now serving and giving of yourself in order to help the body grow and to use your gifts and talents that the Lord's given you for good works, that you should walk in them. And I think those are all key components of small ways that you can model discipleship to your kids. Giving, serving, community, legitimate community, praying for, sharing burdens, and that is the essence of the overflow of our heart out of the desire to show the kindness of God to others, not to earn salvation through those things, but to be an overflow of like, man, the Lord's blessed us and given us so much. What are ways that I can model that for the people around me in my life?
Yep. But knowledge, learning is best caught rather than taught.
Yeah.
So your child watching you, not just hearing from you the importance, but watching you sort of model that out is important. But I think too, just one tool for parents you could do, whether at dinner, on a car ride, or on your way to church, would be to just ask your child, hey, why do you think we go to church? And just hear what they say.
Yeah.
And then maybe you share, and not necessarily correct and rebuke them if they say something awful, but just share why you go to church. I think that'd be helpful.
Oh, I think that's a great idea.
So, yeah. Anything else? It's good.
That's all I got this week, but we'll be back next week for another episode of the Couch Time Podcast. We love you guys. We're praying for you. We don't want to just give you guys more things to do, but these are even helpful reminders for myself of how I can be growing.
Oh, I agree. This episode, personally, like, convicting. Yeah. I'm not perfect either.
Oh man, okay. There's multiple of those areas that I'm probably not demonstrating well to students, but also like that I just need to grow in my own heart and my own overflow of the Lord. So
it's great.
We love you guys. We're thankful for you. We'll see you next week.
Peace.
Hey, thanks for watching.
You can follow us on Instagram at the Couch Time Podcast.
Let us know what you thought about the podcast. Also, let us know if there's any topics or things you'd like us to cover. You can comment and email us at podcast@graceky.org.
Please like, subscribe, and share the video with other parents.